So I have this behind me and it says wisdom. The grayer the hair, the more there is to share. And that was from the class of 2012. So teaching was always a passion and it was in my plan, my master plan of becoming a great dentist because you can't become great at anything if you're not constantly educated. What I learned when I graduated dental school is nothing compared to what I actually did 3 years later, 5 years later. I didn't learn implants in dental school. We learned that they fail. We didn't learn all this cosmetic dentistry in dental school. It wasn't, really available. It wasn't, we learned what was there for the level. But anybody that just continues to constantly learn, and same thing within finance, dentistry, it's unimportant. If you're not constantly learning or surround yourself with that, you're doing a disservice to your clients, your patients. And for me, teaching was just a giant CE course.
Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by none other than Dr. Eric Studley, a dear friend and seasoned professional with an extraordinary journey to share. Eric takes us through his remarkable path, starting from his aspirations in dental school, facing hurdles, and ultimately finding his stride in the financial services industry. He shares about the challenges he encountered, from initial rejections to attending dental school in Guadalajara, Mexico, before finally landing a spot at NYU. After graduation, Eric dove into the world of dentistry, revitalizing a struggling practice in Brooklyn. However, an unforeseen health complication redirected his path, leading him to the medical waste industry and then later to insurance, despite his initial reservations. From humble beginnings, Eric built a reputable insurance firm specializing in the dental market, all while upholding a steadfast commitment to ethics and integrity. His tenure as a professor at NYU further shaped his belief in the importance of continuous education and ethical practice in both finance and healthcare. As our conversation unfolds, Eric delves into the fusion of his career and personal values, emphasizing the joy found in serving others and fostering genuine connections. His reflections on mentorship and positively influencing others resonates deeply, highlighting the profound impact of authentic relationships in both business and academia. Join me and Eric for a discussion that goes beyond professional success to explore resilience, adaptability, and the transformative power of genuine human connections. Enjoy the journey. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Hero of the Hour podcast. I'm actually happy and fortunate enough to have a very good friend, somebody who's been a buddy of mine for the last couple of decades. He's got a story that takes him from the rags to riches, and he's built an incredible career not only in education, but also in the financial services industry. Let me welcome to our podcast my friend, Dr. Eric Studley. Eric, welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mark. And yes, I'm truly excited and also to, be sharing this space with you for this time.
Love to talk because for people that do not know you, you have got an incredibly interesting story because for somebody that's in the financial service business, there are not too many people that go to dental school to get into the insurance business. So, maybe you ought to tell people, sort of the Eric Studley story, which is, I got to tell you, people, it's damn fascinating.
Well, it is true. I didn't go to dental school to get into the financial business, but everything kind of sets you on a map. I started dental school, first of all, when I graduated college, didn't get accepted to dental school for the first 2 years. So I left the country and went to dental school in Guadalajara, Mexico for 2 years, then reapplied. And the third time, and they say third time's a charm, I got accepted to NYU, but I also had to start all over. So the 2 years that I had already completed, I had to start all over. After I graduated from NYU, I was asked to be on staff, and I started teaching a day a week, from the day I graduated. And I worked for multiple dentists, like any new dentist, worked for multiple dentists for 1 year. And after that 1 year, I got fed up with working for somebody, and I made the ridiculous leap into purchasing a practice after only being out for 1 year. And people always say, like, what was my, my business direction? Who did I read, to really take this leap? And I say, well, I studied the Forrest Gump School of Business, and I was basically too stupid to know I was too stupid. And I think that at least it worked out phenomenal for me because I bought a um, declining, dilapidated, disgusting, any D you can probably come up with practice that was only doing about 2 days a week in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. Uh, but it had, 5 operatories. It was next door to a physician, next door to a pharmacy, and 2,000 apartment buildings across the street. And everybody in those apartment buildings hated the dentist. And I came in. We gave a whole new, fresh coat. Fresh dentist, modern dentistry. And we opened the first week I opened, an article came out that a dentist in Florida gives HIV to a patient. This was
Oh,
the first week I opened.
oh.
And yes, yes, talk about, a grand opening. And yet, for us, it actually was something that catapulted us because being that fresh new dentist, I had all the sterilization techniques. I had everything that was, protocol plus already in place. And the patients felt even more comfortable coming to us. And within 6 months, we were seeing over 100 new patients a month. Um, Within 6 months, I had a staff of 25, and within the first year, I had every specialty working under our roof. Um, I did that for about 10 years and then unfortunately started having some problems with my hands and arms and spent a year in and out of different doctors and specialists. And it was eventually decided I had to have bilateral carpal tunnel surgery, bilateral median nerve surgery. And just to give you an idea of the kind of workaholic I've always been, I opted to do both arms and hands at the same time.
Oh,
So that this way it was like a 3 month, rehab back to physical therapy, and then I can go back to work. Yes, it was quite
so the
interesting,
plan at
you
that
know.
point was I'm going back and I'm
Oh,
going to
I was
get
going
my dental
back.
empire. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was going back. At that point, I was in negotiations for my second location. I had already negotiated the space, the lease. So I was on to office number two. I had the great infrastructure in the first practice, and I had an associate that was going to be, moved up to partnership level. Um, so, I had the formula. I was really in the thrust of that whole DSO kind of thing. And unfortunately, though, one surgery led to another, and probably after about 8 or 9 surgeries, I just couldn't go back to work.
So are you married with kids at the time, or is this
I
pre-kid?
am I am married with 2 children. I have NYU loans. I have a practice loan. I have a mortgage. Um, you know, I'm only out 10 years, so I know that sounds like a lot, but 10 years of a new doc, you know, my loans. I had NYU loans that had NYU loans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
so the first 10 years, I got getting rid of my loans. I'm maxing out my retirement plans. I'm saving for the kids' college, you know, and we are living the dental life. We really were. We had 2 cars. We had the second home, in the Poconos. Like things were nice. And when this happened, I just remember even the first time when surgery was scheduled, just staying up all night and like staring at things and just couldn't believe that I worked so hard to get there. And like it's just boom, it's done. And at that point, I made the decision to sell the practice. I sold the practice to two other dentists. And back then, you really didn't have all the lenders like dentists have now. They can go to B of A, M&T, Wells Fargo, PNC. There's tons of banks they can go to for loan. But back then, the dentist who sold you the practice, he carried the note. So when I sold my practice, they gave me a small deposit down, but then there was a 5-year note. After the first year, the two dentists that bought my practice filed for bankruptcy.
I never heard that story before. I never heard that part. Wow.
Yeah, they filed
Oh,
for bankruptcy, and you know, we of course we went through the courts and everything, but they beat me, and they walked away, not having to pay me um, a heavy six figures, which
did you get to take
was
the practice back?
well. What ended up happening was the practice then. What was left of the practice? They took all the equipment. They took the switch plates. Like they took everything. It was done in the middle of the night kind of routine. Um, so the lease reverts back to me now. So now the landlord is coming after me. So now I have a lease for 4 more years that I'm responsible for because I had to. They wouldn't let me, just release myself from the lease. So I then had to just pay out the landlord, um, and move on. So part of my plan was the money that I was getting from the practice. My plan was to use that money and then go back to school and become a psychologist
Oh,
because I already had, I had the science, we had a lot of courses, so like I was able to sort of matriculate.
okay.
And I'm like, all right, great. And I'm getting my disability money. So between the practice money and the disability money, I could be out of work, back in school for a couple of years, and family, we can keep the house and all of that stuff. So just about the same time, the disability company sends me a letter that they are not going to pay me the claim. So all of these different things that I was kind of planning on fell through.
Oh,
So at that point, I'm teaching at the school, maybe 3 days a week at that point, but it's not money in
yeah, yeah.
teaching. It's love. It's love. And so I get a job picking up medical waste, um, for a red bag company, sanitation, who picks up the hazard waste from doctors. So I would go with them and then I would try to sell accounts for them, which, you might as well have, but I needed it because they gave me a salary and health insurance. And I have
Right.
I have a family. So, as much as we saved, it wasn't going to carry us, very, very far. So one day I was at a convention, a dental convention, and I'm manning a table for this medical waste company. And this insurance guy sees me and he's like, you're really good. Everybody seems to know you. You're really friendly. You should sell insurance. And I'm like, insurance? I hate insurance. I don't like the insurance companies. The whole bit. But I spoke to my mentor, and he was like, well, you know what? You should do this. You could be different, you know? And I also needed something where I could be an owner. I own my own practice. Working for people, I'm not an associate. It's not my mentality. Um, so the insurance is like, wow, I can go to school, learn this stuff. It won't cost me a lot of money, and I could still work on the side because I still have to try to pay bills. So I went back, got the licenses, worked for three different insurance companies, 3 different years. Um, Left each one, um, simply because they would teach things. And when I would bring up, well, how about if we tell the client, you're saying A, B, and C, but there's also D, E, and F
Right.
that, and they're like, well, you don't have to tell them that because if they don't know, and it was like, wait, but I know. And
Yeah.
my training is we treat every patient like they have $1 million to spend on their health care. You don't look at their insurance and diagnose them based on their coverage. So after the third time, I went out on my own, um, and I opened up Eric Studley and Associates Incorporated in the front seat of my car, um, with $20, and took out my first client for lunch, who I didn't close, and actually took her lunch to go.
I
So
hope
I
they
knew
didn't. I hope they didn't. I
that
hope they didn't order coffee and dessert because the $20 doesn't
oh,
go that far. Yeah.
I only had the coffee. They ordered a full meal. I was like, no, I'm just going to have coffee while I talk. Um, but after that, I went out on my own, and literally first I rented a basement office from an attorney, because I felt I needed to be someplace, just working in the den, like it just, after having, thousands of square feet, and a full staff. But over the years, just slowly built it one by one, really focusing on the dental market, lecturing in all the residency programs, developing, um, a real ethical professional name in the financial industry, and really just all my colleagues just wanting me to work with them. Um, and they eventually hired the staff. Then at first it was just Mindy, then Nora, then Jennifer, and Kirsten, and Christina, and Marielle, and Richard. Like, these all just came, but it's the same staff that I've had forever, um, which really has been a major, um, plus for our clients, Mark. And you could understand
Yeah.
this.
Absolutely. They're terrific.
It, it's not just that, but our auxiliary staff. We do just so much. You know, they may deal with our auxiliary staff, more after a while. And the fact that they're representing us and they are just so ridiculously professional, um, and friendly, that's a really nice thing that we've been able to build.
Hell, you. I know you recently retired as a professor at NYU. So that was a third. I lose track. 35 years, 34 years,
33 years. Yeah.
33 years, 33 years as a tenured professor at NYU. Tell us about that experience in terms of, tell us about what it's like to teach.
Well, here's a quick example. So I have this behind me, and it says wisdom. The grayer the hair, the more there is to share. And that was from the class of 2012. So teaching was always a passion, and it was in my plan, my master plan of becoming a great dentist. Because you can't become great at anything if you're not constantly educated. What I learned when I graduated dental school is nothing compared to what I actually did 2 years later, 3 years later, 5 years later. You know, I didn't learn implants in dental school. We learned that they fail. You know, we didn't learn all this cosmetic dentistry in dental school. It wasn't, really available. It wasn't. We learned what was there for the level, but anybody that just continues to constantly learn, and same thing within finance, dentistry, unimportant. It's If you're not constantly learning or surround yourself with that, you're doing a disservice to your clients, your patients. And for me, teaching was just a giant CE course.
Yeah.
It really was. And when I unfortunately had to stop practicing teaching, and I used to tell the students, I said, but don't tell the administration. I would do this job for free. This, like, it was such a great, happy place for me. The fact that also I was able to also be independent, run my whole floor.
But I also have to tell you, in fairness, as compared to an hour of your time as a financial advisor or as a dentist, you practically did work for free. Meaning,
Yes. At the very beginning, yes.
meaning, the teaching is the labor of love. It's the giving
It's
back and
totally
the
the labor of
yeah,
love. When
yeah.
when I would interview someone who wanted to come teach, and I was like, "Do you have any questions?" And if their first question was, "How much do you get paid?" I was like, "Wow, you just failed the interview." You know, because that's not why you're going to be here. You get paid in so many different ways. And it really made me a phenomenal practitioner. It made me a much better um, teacher, a better listener, um, a better problem solver. And it also helped me in growing the business um, because I was just involved in just thousands and thousands of dentists.
Tell me about your legendary work ethic. It's helped you. Tell us about your legendary work ethic, and if you had to do it again, would you do it any differently in terms of making your life work the way you want it to work? As you kind of look
Hmm.
back on that, it's like the question I have all the time. It's like I never feel like I'm spending enough time anywhere, and all
Right.
I'm doing is, like I'm never giving the business enough time. I'm never giving my kids enough time. I never give myself any time. I never give,
Hmm.
it's like I work around guilty half the time because there's only 24 hours in a day.
Right. Well, just so you know, I actually one time was able to get 27 hours in a day flying to California. So I literally said, I figured out a way. If I just keep going back and forth, keep going to California, like I will pick up 3 extra hours in a day. So I've tried it, Mark. Um, so many things that fortunately, because we always have to look at things in retrospect. Um, I would have loved if my life had a different, path. The one that I initially started for, having to restart everything in your mid 30s. Um, that really, caused a major reset, in everything because I already had the plan. At 55, this is going to be done. Retirement plan, fully funded. You know, all of this, kids' college, that's out of the way. Like everything was, it was very, very well planned. Um, and I think that my work ethic is just because I've always had that. And I think it's real important that everybody has to have a certain amount of insecurity. You can't lie back on your laurels from yesterday, from last year. I used to, when we were on the plane coming home from vacation, Christmas time, and we're coming back from Puerto Rico with the family, and I would turn to the kids, and on our way home, it's January 1st, 2nd, whatever. And I was like, just so you know, daddy has no money. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, it's a whole new year. And they was like, but we're okay, right? I was like, we're okay. But I've always made that very clear. Like, you can't, that was yesterday. That's great. Let's move on, you know? And because if you're going to just always sit back, you're never going to propel. Um, I ran marathons. So I had the mentality I'm up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I would train and, when I would have to be in school for rounds at 7 in the morning, you know, I'm more alert than my students were. And
Right.
after I'd finish an 8 hour teaching day, let's say 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I would then first go run and see clients. So now I'm running to New York, I'm in the city, I'm in Connecticut, I'm in Brooklyn, I'm in Jersey. I'm getting home 11, 12, up again at 4:35 to train. But it excites me. I feel even when I talk about it, it's people get tired, when I just mention it. Um, to me, I I was at a point in my life when I couldn't work, and it wasn't my choice. It was taken away from me. When I was able to regain that back, I value being able to work hard. I love finishing, you know, like a ridiculous day, and like you get home or you get in the car and you're like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with being be tired from a real good, honest day of work. It really is.
Hard work never
It
killed
propels
anyone.
me,
That's the expression, right?
right?
Uh,
And it
how
propels
much
me to start the
authority?
next day.
How much authority do you think you get as a professor and in your financial services practice because don't get outworked, and because you're willing to do anything that you've asked, you would be willing to do yourself anything you asked other people to do.
Well, just as an example, right before this, I was doing a podcast for a former graduate of mine, former student, um, and he just has said, and he's quite successful. Um, and he says to me, he's like, he owes it to me, um, which is just magnificent. Um, and he was a great student, and he was one of those that, if he didn't have the patient, he sat in my office and he just wanted to hear me, you know, go over another treatment plan with other students. Like he could pick up and as he calls it, a nugget somewhere, you know, and to get that kind of response from a student who's now a colleague, client, um, there's no better than that. You know, it's it's the kind of thing, like, we do what we do, um, just because we like helping people. If you were selling widgets, you'd be the best widget salesman there is. So would I. You know, I used to tell my students, um, y- y- you know, if I went across the street and worked at McDonald's, I would be the number one salesperson within the first 2 months, or at least I try to be. I would then be a shift manager. I said probably in a year or two, I would have a part of a franchise. I
Right.
said, because that's the mentality that you have to have.
You're born with that, or can you teach it? Did you teach it to people who didn't have it?
It's hard, but yes, it's contagious because nobody wants to, the National Lampoon Animal House
Yes.
and Belushi, right? And he's trying to get everybody to, they're in the toga, and he was like, "Let's go," and nobody follows him.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I set the standards, um, and those that reach the standards propelled themselves because it just happened. Those that were lagged behind because they chose to, they they were like the outcasts, and it kind of became a thing where, let's say, other classmen that had other students that were, dwindling,
It,
they made sure they stepped it up.
I have a degree in finance from the Kelly Business School at Indiana, and it's become a top 10 business school, at least when it gets ranked, and so it's gone well. And what I noticed is, because I've got kids there now, that when I went there, it was a good school, but I knew a lot of theoretical stuff. But what I see is my kids, they've figured it out that my kids, even in freshman year, are getting more practical experience. And
Hmm.
what I noticed, when you go to a law school, you may know enough about the law. You certainly have to pass a bar to practice. So you go to law school, or you become an accountant, and you know how to do a tax return or a financial statement, or you become a dentist and you know how to do a crown or an implant or the like. But where do young people today, and what is schools' responsibilities to get these people prepared to be successful in life, not to just have a skill set that, because remember, the people for the most part, the people that have the technical knowledge are generally not the most successful people.
Right. Well, it's always the kind of thing that, you want to find your healthcare practitioner that has a little gray. You know,
Yeah.
it's like you want someone um, that was able to, sort of, in a procedure. I remember I was practicing, and I was already teaching and seeing so much, which was another thing. You know, being responsible for like 600 patients a week, the treatment plans, the faculty, everything. So you really mature. You really grow up pretty quickly, professionally that way. Um, but all you're going to learn, and whether you're in finance, health, you're going to learn the cores. You're going to learn the basics. You're going to learn the terminology. You're going to learn what, step one, two, three, four, and five. What you don't learn is what happens if step one doesn't automatically go to step two and something takes a little curve. That really takes, you have to do. You really do. And, we always, hospital residencies, whether it's medicine, dental, anything like that, you know, they would say it's these are teaching institutions. And we say, oh, I go to a teaching. If you called it a learning institution, it was like, whoa, whoa, wait, doc, you know, like how many hips have you done?
Mhm.
Like, are you first learning? Like, that kind of thing. So when you
Yeah,
graduate
can you just
dental
help me with that?
school,
When you hear the word teaching hospital
right,
versus something that means tell me explain to people who are watching
right.
this what the
So,
difference is.
when you hear the word teaching hospital, it's quite impressive, and you really do want to go to a teaching hospital because then that like they're at the cutting edge of all these different procedures, and they have the gray haired professors and all, have done like 80,000 of the hip replacement to show whatever the surgery might be. So we tell the patient it's a teaching institution, but in reality it's really a learning institution,
Mhm.
because I remember when I was getting my hip done, and actually, and my shoulder, and I actually had to say to the surgeon, I was like, look, I know that this is a teaching. And it's July, and July is when you get all the new residents, like fresh out. Not the best time to go for major surgery. And I was like, so you're doing it, right? He was like, yeah, but I was like, but you're doing it. He's like, all right, could he close? I guess he can close, you know, but you have to learn. Somebody taught me how to do my first surgery, you know, and I did it, but they were the piloting, right hand, left hand, that kind of thing. So you have to learn, but all you learn enough to now learn more.
Do people ever ask you? I've turned 60, and you're a few years older than I am. Do people ask you when are you going to retire? When do you slow down?
Yes, I think I started getting that a couple of years ago. Um, and then so I used to say, even it was like, why is something wrong? Do I look bad? I thought I had good color, and all of that. And they're like, no, but you've been just doing it so long. I would imagine that you're successful enough that you could. And I always say, you know what? The great thing is becoming successful enough that you can retire, and it becomes even better working, because I remember practicing 10 years when like a light bulb went off in my head. I was walking back to my office after I did a procedure, and I was walking back, you know, and as I'm walking, like I got that grin, and it was like, I got it. I'm pretty good. Like I know this. And until you do something long enough, it's it's like you have to do enough of anything to know how to handle everything. It really is. So my
The
plan
gift
is,
is. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
my plan is not to retire. As I said, my retirement was going from 80 hours a week to 40, 50 hours a week. That's a half a week. That's a half a week for me. You know, um, I part of the thing I've learned, a lot of us, we identify with work. It gives us why we're getting up, why we're doing, you know, and daily, I always think that I'm helping like a ton of people, not just financially, just, in my conversations. The financial is a portion of it. It's like the 80% other stuff, that because I'm a colleague, because I'm a trusted advisor. I'm sure you do too, Mark. I get asked things like so out of my purview that it's not funny, but they need me because they value my opinion.
I no, I think that no, that is clear. I think that that's what makes it special. I also what you can't get anywhere where else. I also think that I feel sorry for people who have to spend 6, 8, but sometimes with commuting. 8, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day in professions and careers that they can't stand and are just waiting to get to the weekend and then waiting to put the time in to retire. And I think, ultimately, um, the idea is that whatever you want to do. To me, success is never about money. Success to
Hmm.
me is about being the very best you can be at whatever you do in every area of your life, not just career wise, but be the very best father you can be the very best brother you can be, and be the very best, friend you can be, and do your best in every area that you show up. And to me, that's where the great joy is in life, is
Hmm.
being there. But every time I have hired somebody that did not have our core values, they have no
Hmm.
chance to succeed in that
Yeah.
operation. You go, well, they're the smartest person in the world, or they're the hardest working person in the world, or they're this or that. And you go, why did they fail? And when I was young, I'd go, oh my God, how come Joe didn't make it here? And it always came back to he didn't
Hmm.
share our core values. He didn't share. Joe might have been successful someplace else. Maybe he wouldn't have been, but
Right.
he certainly had no shot here if he didn't have our core values. And the thing I've always been impressed with is that what I liked is that not only do you have our do you and I share core values, but everybody that works with us shares our core values.
Hmm.
And again, is
Right.
it 100% line? No. I mean, what did Mayor Koch used to say? He would say, if you agree with me 7 out of 10 times, I want you to vote for me. If you agree with me 10 out of 10 times, I want you to see a psychiatrist. So
Right.
maybe it's 8 or 9 out of 10 instead of seven with Mayor. We should agree, but I think that's the case. But when you're sitting back and you're looking and every day you're mentoring people in our organization, you're mentoring your students, you're mentoring people in all the walks of your life. What's what what's what what is the best piece of advice you give or have been given over the years in terms of something that somebody who's watching this would learn from somebody who has spent more 3.5 decades teaching people?
I would say, and it's something that, you know, also I have learned, um, is being able to step outside of yourself, and you can call it any kind of terminology, reevaluate, reassess, um, and really see. Everybody always sort of reassesses maybe when something goes wrong. They don't always reassess when something goes right. And I think it's okay to question yourself when when you finish something, and what could I have done better? What did I do that was really good? What worked well with this that didn't work well with, somebody else, whether it be a client, a patient, a staff member. And more importantly than anything is, excuse me, get rid of the ego. Get rid of the ego. Um, like, and don't use your staff to build your ego. If anything, build your staff's ego, and that will pay off so much more. And if you have to tell somebody, you ever had to see this? Somebody says, "Do you know who I am? Do you know how important I am?" And I always would say, if you have to ask somebody that, you're not that important, or no, I don't know who you are, you know, and it really doesn't matter. I don't mind walking into a room and I just become part of everybody. And I've been in that, when I go to my office, I all their families, parties, everything. And it's always like I'm talking to them. And then later, like, the staff member is like, "Oh, that's my boss." It's like, "That's your boss?" It's like, the night I want to work for him. He's like
Well,
such a nice guy. I thought he was like one of the neighbors or something. Oh,
that's
because
Ron
what?
Burgundy with to Christina Applegate. I'm kind of a
Right.
big deal. Yeah.
Right, but when somebody walks in who's like, I am, I'm no, when I walk into a room and I'm with my granddaughters, I'm Poppy. I'm their grandfather. That's the best title I get. I'm Jamie and Taylor's dad. That's phenomenal. Like, those are the titles that I cherish the most.
One of the other things I appreciate about you a lot is my kids played sports as your kids did, and so I would run into the grandparents of a couple of kids who played with my kids, and I happen to say, "Oh my God, my son's playing with so and so's grandson, on the soccer team, let's say." And I go, "He just what a sweet go old man, just cuddly, warm, whatever." He goes,
Mhm.
"You should have seen him in the courtroom. The guy was a flipping animal. He goes, there's not a
Right,
lawyer in this law firm that didn't cry, you know,
right.
didn't cry every day when he was in the office." And I think to myself, the one thing I appreciate both of us is we're the same no matter where we are.
Yes.
If we're talking to the CEO or the janitor, or we had a bad day or a good day, we're pretty much the same guys, and I respect
Uh-huh.
that. Like, there's not I never hear you give your radio voice. Hey,
Yeah. Hi,
you
it's
know,
Dr. Sully here. Right. Yeah,
I'm
that's not
glad to
going to
meet you.
happen.
Yeah. So, but I appreciate I appreciate that about you as well, because there's no phoniness or no fakeness about that at all. But Eric, thank you for taking time out of your very, very busy day to be here with us today. I think I know I learned a lot. I hope everybody else who was here today learned a lot. And I think where everybody who's watched this podcast is looking to find out what's next in your life. And I am too. And I just hope that we'll be able to take a lot of that journey together. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.